Now time to tell you what's happening around the world, and it's time also for our conversation with our partner Deutsche Welle, and also Thomas Sparrow, who's been giving us updates on the Russian-Ukrainian war. Well, there's been a lot of talk about disinformation and fake news. Well, Thomas Sparrow is joining us to give us the latest. Thomas, fill us in, especially on the war in Ukraine. What really does the issue of fake news mean to the war which is ongoing?
It essentially means that this war in Ukraine is not only being fought in political terms or in military terms, but it's also being fought from an information point of view, from words. And that is absolutely clear from the beginning of the war. This was the case with Russia, for example, not even using the term war in Russia. They use the term special military operation. Russia has also banned independent media outlets. At the same time, however, the European Union announced very early on that they were also banning specific Russian state media outlets because they considered them to be part of Russia's propaganda. Now, there are different views on this. There are those who believe that it's important to stop that propaganda, that it's important to take a stance on these issues. There are others particularly critical about the decision by European leaders to ban those Russian media outlets, saying that banning media outlet is not the right way forward, that in democracies you should be able to convince people with truthful information, with fair and balanced and accurate information, instead of prohibiting or banning news media outlets, whether they are considered propaganda or not. So you can see all this has been also described in terms of an information war, which makes it even more important for media outlets, for authorities as well, to really understand what is at stake, and for audiences around the world to be even more careful about this spread of disinformation, or as some people call it, the spread of fake news.
And what can media outlets do to present the information better?
There are different groups, there are different fact-checking groups in international and big media organizations that have been precisely dealing with these issues since the war began, for example, by looking very carefully at speeches that have been done. One concrete case is the latest speech by Russian President Vladimir Putin, but it's important to stress that this is not only something that has been happening now in the war in Ukraine. Before, for example, with the pandemic, the coronavirus pandemic, there were also very serious issues when it came to disinformation and fake news, and as such, this is a challenge that, in particular for media outlets, is growing and growing and growing. It's becoming more important to try and really identify what information is fair and balanced and accurate and what information is misleading or completely false. And as such, it is a challenge because we are ultimately, as media houses, as media outlets, trying to present the best information possible to our audiences in different parts of the world. And one important element is also important to stress. When we are dealing about misinformation, about disinformation and fake news, this is ultimately affecting the way democracies work, because it ultimately affects the capacity that people have, the capacity that audiences have to make informed decisions. If people do not know for sure whether information that they're receiving is reliable and truthful, they can ultimately have problems in making important decisions in a democratic environment. So all this is definitely very important, very significant challenge now, and a big also challenge for media outlets around the world.
Okay, how about viewers themselves? What can they do to better inform themselves?
Media outlets and authorities have tried to combat disinformation, but it's also up to audiences around the world to be more aware of the risks and challenges of disinformation, especially in times of war and conflict. It's ultimately about becoming more active consumers of news, of not simply receiving news on our phones, but actively looking for stories that can help us understand what is accurate and what is not. A case in point, in his latest major speech, Russian President Vladimir Putin leveled serious allegations against Ukraine and the West. Users can easily find fact-checking stories which reveal which of his statements were correct, which were misleading, and which were fake, and more importantly, why.
All right then. Thomas Sparrow, thank you for your time. We'll be back after this break.